through your own code anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
how's it going with you?
It's okay. Yeah, so we got a few students here.
Oh, hello. Hi.
Yeah,
Hello.
this is Jikorn, very enthusiastic student. This is Jeremy, also very
Hello.
enthusiastic.
Hello.
Oh, everyone's popping up one by one. Zeph, yeah, it's like an intro one by one entrance. There are a couple of students actually in breakout rooms. I don't know. I kind of want to keep them out. Yeah, maybe as the students are trickling, actually, maybe Frank, I can just introduce you to what's going on, or like
Sure.
what we're doing here. So I mentioned over text, but I'll mention it again, which is that we're essentially running an online coding bootcamp. And the idea is that everybody here who are students are career switchers, the people that have studied something other than computer science and are looking to switch careers into a tech job, and specifically software engineering. One of the people that just joined is Akira, who's our head of education, and so he's my partner in developing the curriculum and making the school and course great. The course is 6 months long, and so there
part-time 6 months, right?
Full-time, actually. The course is full-time.
Okay. So 40 hours a week kind of thing.
40 hours a week for 6 months. Yeah, we decided to make it long. Typical boot camps are like 3 months and
typical boot camps are slightly shorter than that.
So short. Yeah, we decided to make it 6 months to fill in some of the gaps in the concepts that we felt like were lacking in the 3-month curriculum. Yeah, and so there are 2 batches of students here today. One batch is started in October, and they're about to graduate in April. And then there's a second batch.
Almost done.
Yeah, that was done. It's amazing. It's so exciting. And then the second batch that started in January, and they're roughly almost halfway through the course. So, yeah.
Cool.
At this point. Yeah, everybody's in Singapore. Everyone's planning to apply to coding jobs in Singapore for now. Of course, if we can get jobs in the US, like in California, that's awesome. But there aren't plans for that yet.
Well, there's also COVID, so you know.
Singapore
has no COVID, so
yeah,
huge advantage.
Yeah. So that's about it. So I expect most of the questions today will revolve around that kind of what to learn at these early stages of becoming a software engineer, what to look out for interviews, and how to succeed as a software engineer.
Sure, yeah.
And I suspect students will also have questions about your background, because I shared your profile with them and your journey, both starting programming in secondary school and then through Stanford and the Coursera and then the Google as well.
Cool. Should I introduce myself again?
Yeah, briefly. Okay. So that was the intro for Frank. Maybe I'll briefly introduce Frank to everyone else.
Frank. Or I can introduce myself. It's fine too. Up to you.
I'll just do a little bit, and then you can. Okay. So Frank, Singaporean, grew up in Singapore, studied. Was a computer whiz, I think, from quite young. But Frank can fill in the details. He was leading the computer club at Hwa Chong when he was in Singapore. Went to Stanford, studied computer science. Kind of started taking the most advanced classes in his first year. He was just really good at it. When he was at Stanford, he helped build the first version of Coursera with some friends, and not just the first version, but also was one of the founding engineers and worked there for, I think, 5-6 years.
5 years, a bit over 5 years.
5 years, yeah. Since that, so basically he was one of the founders of Coursera, and then after about 6 years, he decided to join Google and ended up joining Google's TensorFlow team. So TensorFlow is one of the most widely used machine learning tools in the world, and Frank works on essentially building that tool itself. And Frank has been working on that for the last 2 to 3 years and can fill in the details.
Almost 4 actually, almost 4 years now. Yeah.
4 years. Yeah. So super excited to welcome Frank today, and thanks for being here, Frank.
Cool. Yeah. And that's basically about me. I spent some time at Coursera building out their backend infrastructure. So I was Coursera's second software engineer. So when I joined, Coursera was like 2 founders, Professor Andrew Ng and Daphne Collar, and then like 1 grad student and 2 undergrads. So I joined winter of my second year at Coursera. And then when I left, I think we were about 250 people. And right now it's about 800 or 900 people at Coursera right now. So it's a big company. And then after that, I came to Google. So currently I'm working on, as Kaiyan said, something called TensorFlow, which is a machine learning framework. So basically you can think of, Python is a programming language that enables you to do, programming things. So TensorFlow is sort of a machine learning framework that allows you to do machine learning things. And specifically, I'm working on things to do with TPUs, which are Google's accelerators for machine learning. So you have seen people who use GPUs to do machine learning stuff, right? So Google decided, it's more cost effective to build our own hardware, so we did. So this is something called TPUs, and I'm working on making TensorFlow work better with TPUs. So So feel free to ask me whatever you want. And about interviews, I interview at Google, I've interviewed at Coursera, I've been interviewed, when I search for jobs, I go through the same process that you will go through. So I do that, ask me about software engineering, or, ask me what I did in school, stuff like that. Feel free to ask whatever you want. Yeah.
I also wanted to point out one thing about Frank's experience is that despite being super advanced since he started coding, Frank has also been really passionate about teaching, and noted by his experience at Coursera, but also while he was at Stanford, Frank served as a section leader, which is like a teaching assistant for the intro computing classes. And so he taught lots and lots of students the basics, and we really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I was a section leader. I was also a TA for 107, 110. So like the classes like slightly beyond the basics. So like computer systems, the 2 computer systems classes. So I also TA those classes as well. So ask me about what I think you should know about teaching, about learning computer science and things like that. So I did section leading for like 5 quarters. So Stanford's in the quarter system. So 3 quarters.
That's about 2 years.
Academic year. So I did. So I TA'd, I section led, and then I TA'd 107, 110. So I taught. I taught in some capacity for half my Stanford career. Yeah. Cool. Questions?
Hi Frank, I'll start. My name is Kenrick. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
I have a few questions, but I'll just start with a simple one. Why do you leave Coursera?
So I think at that point in Coursera, I was sort of basically a consulting engineer. So basically what that really means is that I go around helping solve other people's problems, which is fine, but I feel like I was not learning as much as I could anymore, because I'm not that old. I graduated in 2014, so I'm like 7 years out of undergrad, so I'm not terribly old. So I still feel like I still feel like I should go learn something, go explore some other area. And one of the things that so Coursera was my only real job, right? Out of I like basically I never interned anywhere, because Coursera just sort of turned into effectively just my job for the summer, my job during the school year, and then my job after I graduated. So I never interned anywhere, so I never got to experience a big company. So there was also the pull factor of I want to see what a big company feels like compared to like at that time Google was 80,000 people, now Google is 120,000 people. So what a big company feels like compared to like a small company of I've seen Coursera grow from 5 to 250 people. Now I want to see what 80,000 people looks like. So that's also sort of why I'm sort of wanted to go to a bigger company after Coursera. So the couple of different factors, the people at Coursera are great, but after 5 years, sometimes you feel that you are stagnating a bit and you just want to do something else for a while. Yeah.
Okay, 2 more questions. Just curious, does Google have the 80-20 rule for programmers as well? And my last question is, what is one advice you would give your former self in regards to programming?
The 80-20 rule as in like the 20% projects? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a bit less prevalent now than it was back before I joined, back in the early 2010s. But you still can do a 20% project. Your manager probably has to just say your manager probably has to know about it, but usually if you find something interesting, you can go out and just help that the other team or something like that. or you can go off and code your own prototypes and so on. But but it's probably a bit less prevalent now that Google is slightly more corporate in nature, but there are still a lot of people doing it. And on our internal job site, there are also people posting like 20% projects that they're asking for help. So those are things that is not very urgent, but things like nice to have. The other thing that people do about people use 20% projects for is that when they want to switch teams within Google. So this is sort of a good way for people to know, for people to try out the new project and see if they're a good fit and get to know the team members and so on. So this is also what people are using 20% projects for now. So yeah, it's probably a bit less prevalent, but it's just, if you want to do it, you can. I used to do something with like research and so on. I'm not doing something, I'm not doing anything right now. I might do stuff in the future. So it just depends on whether there is anything that interests me. And finally, you asked about, I think it was what's one piece of advice that I would give myself when I was younger. Honestly, it would be take more writing classes. And by writing, I mean English. Because as you progress through your career in software engineering, and not just writing, but just like, oral presentations and things like that. But because as you progress through your career and as you get more and more senior, what happens is that you find yourself writing less and less code. And you find yourself writing more and more English, because what you're writing are things like design docs and, giving presentations and trying to, push your ideas through. And I really admire the people. So there are people around me who can, write very quickly and very concisely and just stand up and give a great presentation. So those people I really admire, because, when I write a design doc or when I write email, I just need to go through a lot of revision before it's presentable. But some people can just write something out like that. And because that becomes more and more your job as you progress up through the ranks, this becomes more and more important. This is not something that people tell you during undergrad. You just take a bunch of coding classes, you take a bunch of math, you take a bunch of theory, and and it's just all coding, right? It's all math and coding, and this is great. And for the first few years in your career, it is like that. But as you progress up through the ranks, is less and less so. And you are doing code reviews, you're writing English, basically more than code. And at the director levels or higher, my director probably hasn't written code in like 8 or 10 years, because there's a very different job. And her job involves a lot more writing than mine, for instance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Other questions?
Hey, Frank. Thanks
Yeah,
for joining
hello.
us today.
Yeah.
I think you're by like every metric in our books, and I think most people's books, a very successful software engineer. Yeah, so
I hope.
I would like to have a crack into your brain, and I think you can answer this any way you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So what inspires you as a software engineer? Do you have any role models you look up to? And perhaps when you're in university, maybe like a few years back, what kind of software engineer did you aspire to be then, and do you feel that you're there now? Yeah, so it's a bit of a jumble, but yeah, please answer it any way you like.
Sure. Yeah, I think like when I was like, because I started as Kai said, I was like in computer club in Hwa Chong and so on. So back then, you sort of admire the hackers and people like Linus Torvalds, right? The people who build up. And there's this French guy called Fabrice Bellard that wrote like FFmpeg and wrote a bunch of interesting projects, and you sort of admire them because the ability for them to like just write a lot of code and write useful code, and it's something that I admire. But as you sort of as when you sort of just go into when you sort of get to work in software and things like that, a lot of it you also sort of admire the people who can have like very strong product vision. So those might be software engineers, or those might be product managers, or CEOs and things like that. So if you have like a very strong vision of what you want to do, and you can inspire like people to just work on that vision, that is also sort of like interesting, and I would hope to emulate that someday. People, the prototypical example in this will be Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk is, I don't think he's like super very deep technical, but he is sort of the sort of person who can inspire a lot of people to do stuff. So that is sort of a very interesting role model. Not saying that, everything he does is great, but there's this one quality that I admire in him. So I'm sorry, what are your other questions? I probably should write this down.
No. I threw a lot at one shot. Yeah, maybe this question it's a little bit more reflective. Like when you're in university, what kind of software engineer do you aspire to be then? And do you feel like you're there now, or do you feel like it's something that's ongoing? Or if you didn't have any, like vision, maybe like you could just tell us if it was something that just happened organically, this journey of yours.
I think like what software engineering, I think I wanted to be like effective. I wanted to be able to contribute to whatever sort of thing that I like, whatever goal that I set out to achieve. And that is sort of and I'm also sort of interested in building sort of the like systems and infrastructure, right? So I have like 2 degrees from Stanford. I have a bachelor's and a master's, and both of them are in systems. So things like operating system. So systems comprises of things like operating systems and compilers and networking, and databases. So like your very low level sort of things. And in some sense, I think I don't think I'm there yet, right? Because it's like sometimes and it's not just like the technical skills, right? Because the technical skills, as you just write code, you just get more and more familiar with it. It just comes more naturally. But sometimes it's like things like, the things that are surrounding writing code, things like, project management, things like convincing other people that, what you are proposing to do is effective, is good for the company, or and things like that, or things like providing being a 10x engineer. Like people always say that you should be a 10x engineer, but really what a 10x engineer is like because it's very hard to just be a 10x engineer just by yourself, because it's very hard to write code at 10x the rate of your average software engineer, especially at Google, right? But what a 10x engineer to me is, you are just lifting the entire team, right? If you are in a team of 10, and then you make the other engineers 10% more, like makes the other engineers like twice as effective, then you are much more than a 10x engineer, and things like that. So it's like that is like the sort of things that I want to work on, that I don't think I'm quite there yet. I don't think I'm a great, for instance, tech lead, compared to, like other people that I see around at Google and at Coursera. So, those are the things that I really do want to work on. So, it's probably less about, the mechanics of coding, but more about, the things that are, the sort of maybe softer skills, whatever you want to call them, that surround, that comprise of your job, but that is not just core, just churning out code or debugging and things like that. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully that was helpful. That was just stream of consciousness sort of rambling from me. Again, something I need to work on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So maybe I'll interject here. So yeah, because I know that Frank, has been coding for a long time, and even graduated while that's working in the industry for several years. But most of our students here are kind of learning programming for the first time. It's been less than 1 year.
Yeah, I'm not saying that coding is not important. Coding is important.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, like for our students here, right now they're still struggling to kind of master a lot of the technical elements. At what point do you think they should start focusing on the softer side? Or at what point in your journey did you feel like, okay, I actually like this technical stuff, I've more or less got it, right? I need to start focusing on this.
Honestly, I didn't realize there was a non-technical side until I had my first job. So, because you never are exposed to it, right? So when you get your first internship or when you get your first job, look at what your tech leads are doing, and look at what your managers and so on are doing. And that is sort of because you realize that, they are not writing code, right? Because they are the tech lead or they're the manager. So they're really doing something else. And you will want to ask yourself, is that what you want to be doing? Do you want to be a people manager eventually? Do you want to be a tech lead eventually? Do you want to be like an architect eventually? And then, those are like, a few career paths. Or, do you want to eventually transition into something that is software engineering adjacent? For instance, do you want to be a product manager? Or, do you want to be like a program manager and things like that? So if you look around you as you go into that first job, and then you just emulate what they are doing, and hopefully you can get some lessons from that. So, for now, sure, yes, do concentrate on coding, because the coding, unfortunately, the coding part is a big part in the interview process. Well, it's basically all the interview process is about coding. But other than that, once you get that first job, look around you and see what the various job roles are and how you can progress through your career, because there are many career paths, right? It's not just, you don't have to follow, junior software engineer, senior software engineer, staff software engineer. You don't have to follow that. You can, if you are, better with people and, better at organizing things, you might want to be a product manager, right? Or, you want to be, something else. Or if you're good with people, or you might want to be a people manager, you want to be a software engineering manager and things like that. So those, at that point, you should, take a look at what's around you and, see, because, and this is probably, if you get a job at a smaller company, and probably is less apparent. If you get, for instance, if you get a job at a 5-person startup, just like everyone does everything. So maybe less apparent, but if you get a job at a bigger company, you will see all the different career paths, and then you should start thinking about your skills, while not neglecting your day job. Start thinking about how you can, brush up on your non-coding skills to advance or to progress in your career. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey Frank,
Yeah,
this is
hello.
Jikon here. Yeah, thanks for
Hi.
joining us today. Yeah, so according to Kai, you are very passionate in terms of teaching like CS and programming, right? So just wondering, what's your outlook or philosophy on how someone should learn computer science, and maybe on the flip side as well, like how should one approach to teach someone else computer science? Yeah.
I think for learning computer science, I think, you really like getting exposed to like coding and doing like exercises and, things like that would helps a lot at the start, because a lot of students that, I taught or I TA'd or I encountered in office hours are, people who like the difficulties they have are things like they don't get. It's like, because like writing code is very different than just normal writing or writing English. And sometimes it's like, the compiler is an unforgiving mistress, right? If you make one tiny mistake, the compiler gets very angry at you. And at the start, people do sort of, and it's also sort of a different like paradigm in thinking. So a lot of people take some time to get used to that. And I think the sooner you get over that barrier, is like the sooner, once you get fluent in learning the first programming language is often the hardest. Once you learn the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one is a lot easier. So once you get, so in general, the advice is, get comfortable with your first programming language, and then get comfortable with all the concepts. And then, then you can sort of branch out. In that sense, I'm not sure if that made any sense at all, but it's usually that's what also Stanford does, right? Stanford with like, I'm not sure if you have looked at the course materials for like CS 106A or 106B, which is like the two sort of Stanford classes that teaches you programming. Like we sort of like concentrate on like one language and getting the mechanics down early. And then in the second class, then we sort of talk more about our algorithms, and we talk about recursion, because if you are not familiar with the language, then the other sort of more advanced concepts are really not. It's like it won't get into your head if you're still struggling with, should I put the bracket here or should I put the bracket there, right? And for teaching, I feel like it's always helpful for me, like when I do like section leading and so on at Stanford, to just have some just go through some problems and walk through step by step what I think, right, man. It might be the solution might be 8 or 10 lines, but it's very helpful to draw diagrams and and just sort of sketch out what I am sort of thinking as I approach the problem, because usually I know that some other people just sort of just go through a bunch of slides, or just present the code and just sort of describe what each line does, but that is really not how you approach a problem. It's like, because sometimes when you look at a problem, you might think about, at first, your first instinct might be to think about it this way, and then after that you realize that doesn't work, and then the second time you're thinking about it this way, and then the third time and then you think about it another way, and then finally it works. It will be good to sketch out like the thought process rather than presenting the solution, because sometimes it's like the solution might involve some sort of leaps of logic that you might not be able to follow. And that's, this is one of the problems I have with some math textbooks, is like they just present something and then they just present the answer, and then there's like, I know that there's a lot of steps in between that seems to be skipped, and then I spend hours trying to figure out what the steps are. So I want to make it easy for the students. I'll just sketch out very explicitly like what the intermediate steps are when I go through like the section problem. So this is the way I like to teach, because this is how I like to be taught. So I also like to teach this way. Yeah.
Cool. So in summary, it's essentially for learning, try to get like the basics down first. Solidify before you try to branch out.
Yeah.
Right. And for teaching, it's more of like try to visualize the problem, try to draw it out, and then approach it thereon. Yeah.
So if you ever teach programming to someone else, this is also helpful, because this is the exact same skill you'll need to do interviews. Because for tech interviews, if you just stare at a whiteboard silently, I have no idea how to evaluate you. So I always encourage my candidates to actually think out loud. But I recognize the fact that some people don't like thinking out loud, are not used to it. So this is something that you need to practice. So, teaching other people is actually great practice for your own, tech interviews that you will inevitably encounter in your career. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much for that advice.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi Frank, Veena here.
Hello, hey.
Hi. So my question is just out of curiosity. So it's like, so if it was not for Coursera, so what will you be choosing instead of that? I mean, as a dream project of yours? Yeah.
I think if it weren't for Coursera, I would probably have joined a big company early on. I would probably have, interned at like larger companies, the usual suspects, right? FAANG.
Yeah. So if it was a dream project of yours, what will you be? What will you choose to do?
I think I want to work on, I'm a systems person at heart. I'm a distributed systems person at heart, in fact. So like, like clusters of machines working together. So it's like, I want to work on projects where, there is like that aspect of a problem, but I don't want it to dominate. I don't want to be, I'm not sure I want to be working on, developer tooling for my next job, for instance. I might want to work on something working on the infrastructure for something that is like consumer oriented. So if possible, I want to work on something that that's social good, right? For instance, for Coursera, that I like to look at that as sort of like a social good thing. We are bringing this content out to the masses. So those are sort of things that I want to work on. It might be in education, it might be in climate change, it might be in a couple of areas that I'm sort of interested in. So those will be like my dream projects. Yeah. A combination of my interests, like, and my sort of skill, my interests, both tech and non-tech, and what I'm, and so, but sometimes it's very hard to find, companies that, have those things together. Yeah. So sometimes you choose one or the other. So, not to say that Google is a bad place. Google is a great place, but for Google, I'm working more on like my technical interests rather than my non-technical interests, right? So, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Hi Frank. This is Elvin.
Hi.
Yeah. I have two questions. One is a more lighthearted one. The other one is a bit more maybe personal to you.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, more technical. So the first question is, you mentioned previously that you worked in Coursera as a kind of like a back-end engineer, and now
Yes.
you're working at Google TensorFlow to integrate the machine learning software with the TPU.
Yeah,
So
with hardware. Yeah.
with the hardware. So the question is, was there a big change in the technical skills? Because it seems like you're transferring from a software engineer to becoming more like a engineer that deals with data, like deals with machine learning, which requires like statistics. So I'm not sure if my thinking is correct there. Oh, and the second question is, based on your experience, I don't mean to generalize this, but do you find any differences between a bootcamp graduate and a university graduate?
Okay. Sure. So first question is there a big skills change between Coursera and Google, right? Yes, there is. I don't think there's a big skills change. Certainly, like the day-to-day job that I do can be quite different. For instance, at Coursera, we use Python and Scala. And at Google, I'm primarily, you can look at my GitHub profile. I think it's linked on my LinkedIn. If not, it's like github.com/FrankCHN. Like I'm writing a lot of C++ right now. So, like so the day-to-day sort of mechanics of coding is different, and sort of the problems I solve are slightly different. But sort of the general concepts that you probably learn at bootcamp or you learn in CS, learning computer science, a CS degree is probably going to be applicable, like problem solving skills and things like that. How to debug, a program. Sure, at Coursera, I'll probably be debugging some, like, but why doesn't the user login work? But at Google, I might be debugging things like, why doesn't the hardware want to talk to the software anymore, right? But you are debugging different things, but the course of debugging skills, right? Whether it's you are doing printf debugging, just print out all the variables until you find out what's wrong, or something more advanced. Those skills sort of carry through whatever you're doing, because it's like, yeah, the problems change, but I think the cores of concepts will remain. So yeah, I understand that you guys are mostly working on like web stuff right now, right? So you're starting with that. But eventually, but I think those skills would transfer as well. So I don't think it would be some time to get used to. You have to there's a lot of background that you need to learn. I bought some machine learning books and read them. I don't know how much I retained, so hopefully a bit. But I think eventually, but I think just the core stuff should be similar. And the second question is differences that I see between bootcamp grads and university grads. So at Google, I haven't really encountered a lot of bootcamp grads, but at Coursera, we did hire a few. And I think the main difference has been that for new grads from university coming to Coursera's tech stacks, depending on their background, so they might have intern at Google or they might have intern at Facebook. So they might be sort of, and Coursera's primarily, Coursera's product is primarily a website. So sometimes they're just not used to, they've never really built websites before. So especially, like for front end, right? They've never written JavaScript before because that's not required in university. You can get by with C++ and Java. So usually they probably have a firmer grounding in just sort of core CS concepts, mainly because they've taken a lot more classes there, but they're probably they need some time to ramp up on the actual product side, the actual day-to-day. Oh, you need to write some JavaScript. Okay, I need to learn how to write JavaScript, as opposed to like the bootcamp grads that we hired. They're probably a bit less firm on just sort of core computer science concepts and things like that, but they're often better just oh, this is like the first 2 weeks on the job, right? Oh, let's make some minor changes to the site, just 3, 5, 10 lines of changes. They're usually better at, just getting down and digging in and trying things out. And so like those are the sort of the differences I see. Each has lots to learn, right? The people who are the CS grads from university usually, has to pick up JavaScript and things like that. And then sometimes the people and the bootcamp, the people from boot camps would have to, because sometimes during technical discussions, you can get lost, right? Especially if it's backend technical discussions where, there are concepts like, how do you design a reliable service, or how do you do fault tolerance and things like that, that you just don't get exposed to in the bootcamp because there's just not a lot of time. But you do at least learn some of the basics of in universities, in college, if you take like parallel computing, or you take classes like that. So there's like lots to learn on either side. So I like work performance wise, I don't really see a difference, at least in the people that we've hired. But the caveat is that Coursera did hire a lot more fresh grads than bootcamp grads. Yeah.
Thank you for your candid answer over there.
Yeah.
Hi,
Cool.
Frank. I'm Jeremy.
Yeah. Hi. Hello. Hey.
Hi. I just wanted to pick off where you left off. I was wondering if you have any resources to kind of like help bootcamp grads to kind of like level up with more time, of course, to where those CS grads would be in terms of knowing this kind of basic concepts.
Have you taken Coursera courses?
I mean, any in particular, or yeah.
I think if you want to, so there are two things, right? So one is there is like the interview stuff where you probably want to just do like first, before you can catch up and so on, you have to get in the door. So the first thing that you probably want to do is let's do some lead code. That's like sometimes I still go on lead code and do a few questions here and there, because honestly, lead code is very different than actual coding, right? I never write binary search, or I barely write recursion in my day-to-day code, right? It's like, this is not something that you write day-to-day, but unfortunately in lead code, you write that all the time. So, for that, you do like lead code. There's also there are like lists of like technical, like sort of the systems design interview questions. I'm not sure if that is really applicable to like people who are being hired as like entry levels of engineers, but you can take a look at those things and see what's out there. And after that, there are classes online. There are Coursera classes, edX classes, Udemy classes. There are just lectures on YouTube that you can watch at 1.5x. Just turn the subtitles on and just watch at 1.5x speed. That's my trick. Don't watch. Some professors speak really slowly, so just watch those classes. You don't have to do the PSATs, but at least take a look at them. And that usually gives you like some idea of what, the sort of like the key concepts that people are talking about. And then beyond that, if you're really interested, then you can just look at papers, right? If like, for instance, you are interested in distributed systems, there are like you can just search for classic distributed systems papers, and then you'll find, vector clocks, and you'll find, the sort of papers that sort of starting from the 1970s, how this field is built up, right? Paxels, vector clocks, and things like that. And then you can just look through the papers and, read them a few times and get like a general idea of how like the field is. And this is just basically how like a university course works as well, right? So like on an undergrad level, you have the core classes where just the professor is just feeding you information. And then a step beyond that is like a bit of feeding information, a bit of discussion. And then at the advanced graduate level is just, let's just discuss a bunch of papers. So it's like the sort of the similar progression that you can take as well. Does take a bit of time. I'm not sure if there are any shortcuts involved, except the YouTube 1.5x speed stuff. but it is. But the good thing is that you can do it on your own time, and you can pick and choose what you like. Because in a CS degree, you have to do the core, right? I have no interest in HCI, but I took the HCI class anyway. Like HCI is human computer interaction. So I'm no interest in that, but I took it anyway because it's like, oh, it fulfills the requirement. So you can just pick and choose what you would want to do. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, Frank. So earlier you were saying that when from the bootcamp grads that you interacted with at Coursera and the uni grads that you interacted with at Coursera, you're saying that there were some kind of core CS concepts that the uni grads were more strong in, like had more foundation in. And so what other than the kind of interview, other than interview questions like data structures and algorithms, interview questions, and potentially some systems design questions, are there any of those core concepts that you would say people from bootcamp grads must learn or like must have?
There is not really, I don't think there's, like, excepting the interview stuff, I don't think there's anything that you must learn, but I think the CS grads are just sort of exposed to the terminology a bit more, because it's like, especially the boot camps in the US, a lot of it is more, again, 6, 8, 12 weeks, right? It's a lot shorter. So you're just only exposed to like a single stack. You're only exposed to, say, MongoDB and Node.js, right? So that is sort of, so you only really know the terminology inside it, rather than, so you might have never seen like a SQL, like MySQL or SQL Server before. So you just don't know anything about, tables and, columns, because you only know the MongoDB thing of, collections and documents and things like that. So, those are similar concepts, but if you have never been exposed to it, you just never heard of it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So those sort of things, rather than recursion or dynamic programming, it's like, that's not really useful day to day.
Perfect. Thanks.
Hi, Frank. Jerome. Yeah. Thanks so much for your time. Yeah, I just wanted to ask more just about your day. Like, what's your day-to-day like? And also, like, how do you structure it? Maybe as an undergrad, Coursera, and then Google now, like, how do you divide your time?
Okay. This is like different stages of my life, right? So I have to like sort of explain it differently. So back when I was doing Coursera, because I was also studying, so I was still a full-time student back then. So my day, it was a lot of work. I gained like 20 pounds, like 10 kg, just because I stopped exercising and started eating a lot more. Maybe it's stress eating. So my day then, it was like, I skipped a lot of my classes. That's the one thing. I didn't have a typical undergrad experience. I skipped a lot of my classes, and I just watched them at night, on the recorded videos and things like that. So basically, I sort of went to Coursera like 3 days a week, because the other 2 days had classes that they take those classes. Some of them take attendance. I have in-class quizzes that I cannot skip. So and then I sort of did my work there, and then came back, did more, and then started on the PSET, sometimes after like 10 or 11 p.m. I really do not recommend that lifestyle. After that, but after I graduated and started working, my day has been, I wake up at 8:30 or 9. So I'm not I'm sort of a night owl. And then before COVID, right, I got to the office at 10 or 10:30, and then usually it's like I have some meetings and then check my email, clear my email inbox and so on, and then lunch at 12, and then I come back to and then I come back, and then usually and then hopefully there's a period of uninterrupted sort of time, so that I can get actual work done, and then I eat dinner about 7, right? Again, pre-pandemic, so you can actually go to a Google cafe and eat dinner. Now I have to cook, which is taking up more time. And then after that, I will go for a run, or and stuff like that. And then I might check my email or clean up some stuff that I work. So from like 9 to 10 or something like that. And then during the weekends, after I graduated, during the weekends, I really try very hard not to work. Sometimes, if you have deadlines and so on, bo bian. But really, I try quite hard not to work. Currently, it's sort of similar during like the pandemic, because everyone's staying at home now. So I guess I don't have a commute anymore. But on the other hand, I have to cook. So I think it's a wash on time for me. And then I guess right now I'm also sort of volunteering a few hours a week with like with what's it called, open government products. So in GovTech. So I'm helping them, build some features on FormSG. So I guess you guys probably all have used the product at least. So like building attachments and building like some other features on like FormSG. So I volunteer with them for a couple hours a week. But that's just coding. That's just, Frank, we need you to implement this feature, and then I just go off and just implement. So this is not. It's just I want to write some JavaScript. So this is how I'm writing my JavaScript. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you're always like looking for side things other than your work. So you're basically always like owning something new. So
this is actually the first side thing I've done in a while. I think it's mainly because looks sort of interesting, and then they were asking for volunteers back then. So because all the real GovTech people are working on COVID-related stuff, right? Contact tracing, vaccine distribution and stuff like that. So, but they're just getting like some volunteers to implement some features. So I was like, I want to see what JavaScript is like, right? Because the last time I wrote JavaScript was like 6 years ago, and then I want to see what it's like. So this is just sort of me getting myself familiar again with JavaScript. I still don't like the language, I discovered. So there's that. There's that. So, but it's fine. That's a personal preference. I know lots of people who love it. I personally don't like it, but that is whatever it is. Other than that, I also do a lot of like theater photography and things like that, and obviously that stopped. So I volunteer with the Stanford like theater department to take photos of their productions. But obviously with COVID, no more. So I just found something else to fill out my time. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Frank.
Yeah. Cool. Other questions?
Hi, Frank. I have another question. Just now you mentioned that usually on a day-to-day basis, you don't really use recursion and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, like, as someone who has interviewed others before, why do data structures and algorithms continue to be a primary tool in assessing candidates? What role does it play in? Yeah. I
think it's like many people have many opinions about this, but I think it's a combination of inertia, right? It's like this is the way we've always done things, and we can compare candidates more easily this way. And also, I suspect a lot of these questions is a proxy for an intelligence test, right? Because a lot of if you look at the lead code questions, there's usually, especially when you go to like medium and then hard questions, you find that there is sometimes you need like a flash of insight to basically get the question. So I think it's like sort of a intelligence test that's dressed up as a coding test, because it would be good to test coding, of course, and that's part of it. But the actual sort of the actual why we are asking DP, why we are asking these trees questions and things like that is, I really do feel like it's just an IQ test in another way. So, and this is also the reason why I try really hard not to ask these questions. I want to see you write code. When I interview people, I want to see you write code. I'm not necessarily wanting to see you wanting to see you, just trying to figure out some trick in the algorithm. So one of the questions I used to ask is, given a Sudoku board, return true if the Sudoku board is valid and return false if it's not. So there's no trick in this question, right? Everyone knows the rules of a Sudoku board, unique columns, unique rows, and unique 3x3 squares. But depending on how you structure the code, it can be, your solution can be clean, or your solution can be like really, really long and sort of badly managed. So this is sort of these are the sort of questions that I try to ask. But I know that a lot of other people still like to ask, the sort of DP and things like that. But at least for me, I really try very hard to avoid that. Cool.
Hi, Frank. Zach
Hello.
here.
Yeah.
Just a very general question, like based in the tech world, right? Do you think there's any skill set that's lacking? There's like blockchain, cybersecurity, and the list is like so long. Is there a particular field that you think it's like lacking in any way?
I think it comes and goes, right? Like blockchain was a thing, just a few years ago, and then now it's suddenly a thing. Machine learning really wasn't a thing until in 2013 or so, and then it suddenly became a thing. Right now, it will be like there's still like a big demand for like people like doing data science. Blockchain, I don't know because I'm not really plugged into that community, but I think there's still a lot of people. still some demand for like people from not from tech companies as much, but from like traditional your Fortune 500 companies like your Walmart or your Caterpillar, those sort of companies who are trying to like, they have a lot of data, they want to make better use of their data, so they're hiring like they do hire like data scientists, and they do hire people who are working on those things, right? Because like, as I think Mark Andreessen or something, someone says software is eating the world, so like everyone is sort of building up that capability. So and sort of the spearhead of that is sort of data science. So I think in the next, I do see a lot of demand for that. Just from like these sort of companies, not really from FAANG, because FAANG already realized this a lot earlier, and they already have huge teams of software engineers and data science people working on it. But I think from just these sort of traditionally these companies, you don't think of them as like IT or tech companies, that they're hiring like data science and sort of adjacent sort of roles. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But who knows what? Yeah, no problem. And who knows what happens in the next 5 years, right? Because the field moves really quickly. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the app Clubhouse, right? There's the new social network thing that's supposed to be hip, right? And they're growing by like 10 million users a week or something like that. So it's like things change really quickly. So who knows?
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Other questions?
Hi, it's me again.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, like, being such a professional programmer, right? Is there anything you dislike about programming, or like you dislike like what you see in other people's code? Yeah.
I dislike what I see in my own code a lot, right? Because it's like it's true. You can look back. I'm sure if you have written some code before and you look back at the code that you wrote 3 months ago, 4 months ago, you're like, what is this? Why am I doing this? I also, there are like aspects of the job I don't like include, debugging my own code, debugging other people's code. I'm trying to figure out what sometimes, bugs can be very hard to reproduce. Like, I'm not sure if I ever encountered tests that pass 98% of the time and fail 2% of the time. Like, debugging those things can be really annoying. I guess a lot of my problems revolve around debugging, but I only have myself to blame because most of the time I'm debugging my own code. So it's like, it's my own fault. But, just stuff like that, right? I want to, write new code. I don't want to debug existing code, but a lot of times that's what I'm doing anyway. So yeah, that is sort of some of the stuff I dislike. Other stuff would just be, just normal sort of. Sometimes I don't, sometimes in a big company, there are, politics. Your projects get reorged and things like that. But that's like just normal office stuff. There's not really anything to do with coding, right? Because sometimes you get reorged, and then after that your project gets canceled, or you get a manager that your manager that you like left, and then now there's a new person there, and sometimes you don't like that person, but that's just welcome to a white collar job rather than anything to do with programming. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the insights. Yeah.
Cool. Other questions? I'm free, so and I'm a night owl, so I'm not gonna sleep for another few hours.
Oh, dude, what time is it there now?
It's 11:53 p.m.
Oh, all right. I thought it was like a 12-hour difference.
In New York, it would be a 12-hour difference. In here, it's Pacific time, so it's like more like 15 hours. Yeah.
Not a question, but I just wanted to add that just now you said you wanted to be someone who inspires other people. Yeah, but I just want to say, like, from the way you talk and from the way that you're so energetic in your ideas, I think it's quite inspiring.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, but I think in general, it's just more about it's one part of it is inspiring, and part of it is actually helping them be more productive, right? You can be a better tech lead and things like that. I think that was more of what I'm sort of getting at, is like, you want to help be a better tech lead, you want to have better designs, you want to be able to help them to debug problems easier. And that is sort of, that is how you sort of bring out the capability of the whole team. Yeah. because inspiration is great, but ultimately you still have to get down and work.
Hi Frank, I have a question. It's on your prep for the Google interview, or like any interview in general. Like, what's your process like?
So currently,
besides
during the
leak code.
yeah. So what I did that I didn't find a lot of other people doing is I bought like a little whiteboard, and I bought some markers, because I'm not sure if you have ever tried writing code on paper before or writing code on a whiteboard before, but it feels really different than writing code on a computer, because first you can't do copy and paste, right? You can't tab and then all your code gets aligned. So it's something that you really have to get used to. Like a lot of candidates I see, like never think about this until you come to the interview, and then I hand them a marker and I'm like, okay. So obviously this is less less true in pandemic, right? So you are just doing, everyone's doing like video conferencing. So, but if you interview in person, make sure that they give you a computer, and if they don't, do try practicing that. I don't see a lot of people doing it. Other than that, a lot of it is like there is like the technical preparation and the sort of the non-technical preparation, right? Because the technical preparation is, yeah, sure, do lead code. And try to do a few from each sort of category, right? You want to do like some from graphs, you want to do some from recursion, you want to do some from DP, you want to do some implementation questions, and so on and so forth. And then, but the other part is that there is also sort of the non-technical part of the interview, right? It might be a separate interview. It'll also be things like, I always like to ask the candidate to sort of break the ice, hey, I'm Frank, I work on this, tell me about yourself. So those things, you can prepare for, right? You know what to emphasize, and you want to tell a story. So you might just want to say, just write out a list of like sort of bullet points and say, I want to talk about this, and these are my experiences, and so on and so forth. They will also ask you that one of the rounds at Google and at Facebook is also a behavioral round. So they will ask you, tell me about a project that you have done, tell me about a time that, you resolved the conflict with a teammate, that sort of questions. So those things are also preppable, right? There are only so many questions they can ask, just have a listing of projects and have like some categories, and then you try to fill them in. And then you try to match the projects to, in this project, I resolve a conflict with a teammate, and this was the scenario. Even just writing these things down would help a lot with, your interview prep. And then finally, there is, for the non-technical part, you probably also want to figure out if the company is the right match for you. So you want to think about, do you want to go for a small company, a big company? What sort of culture do you want to be? What questions do you want to ask? Because at the end of every interview, it's like, okay, we are done. Do you have any questions for me? And some candidates will be like, you also want to sort of, figure out, and this is your opportunity to figure out whether you actually want to work for those companies, work for that company. So, come up with, some questions that you want to ask. You might also even ask the same question, to multiple interviewers, because usually, you get like 5 in a row or something like that, right? And you can sort of compare and contrast what they say about that company and so on. So that is sort of how I prepare for interviews. Like, I think the technical part is like, sure, it takes a lot of time, but it is like, you just get the cracking the coding interview book, or you get some a lot of interview prep resources online. So that's not a problem, but I think that a lot of people do neglect the non-technical prep, right? The sort of behavioral questions and the sort of what you're going to ask them, those things that you probably just want to keep in mind as well, at least. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. In the interest of time, I think we will wrap up here. But I have one final question for Frank.
Yeah.
Which is, if knowing that everyone here is within their first year of coding and about to get their first software engineering job, what general advice would you have for everyone here to focus on during this stage in their careers?
I think you probably should focus on just getting more familiar with code, because I know that this is probably a pretty intense sort of process, and you might just be learning a bunch of new things over and over, learning a bunch of, not over and over, but learning a bunch of new things. Today you might be doing this, tomorrow you'll be doing that, and then after that you'll be doing something else. But I think, if you get like the fundamentals of, coding and getting familiar with it down, and the other stuff will come easier and easier. And you'll find that, as the snowball rolls downhill, it gets faster and faster and it gets bigger and bigger really quickly. So, but once you start the process, you'll find that you would find it a lot easier. So, sometimes you'll be discouraged, right? Sometimes when I do PSETs in college, in university, I'm also sort of discouraged. I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. And all my friends seem to have completed it. I'm an idiot, right? But, but you believe in yourself, you will eventually get it. It might take a bit more time for you than for other people. That's normal. It took, and for some, especially some of the machine learning classes that I took, I also took a lot more time than other people to, really sort of learn the material. So, that's normal. And I guess have fun. I think, at least for me personally, coding is really fun. And I hope you get the same experience.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Frank.
Cool, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have a good evening.
All right, cool. See you. Bye.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.